They packed their bags for paradise and left me behind with a lie. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the stained glass panels my mother once restored by hand. I stood frozen in the kitchen, fingers curled around a chipped ceramic mug, its heat long gone. Just like them. Outside the bay window, Richard and Sloane Harper were loading the last of their luggage into the back of the SUV, laughing like a scene from a travel ad. Lily barely glanced up from her phone in the back seat. None of them had said goodbye. Across the street, old Mrs. Kendrick watched from her porch swing, lips pursed, disapproval gleaming behind her oversized sunglasses. She gave me a polite wave. I forced a smile. I wondered what Sloane had told her this time. Probably that I was just a freeloading 20-something squatting in their guest room. Never mind that this house had been my mother's dream, or that she left it to me when cancer claimed her. I wasn't just living here. I belonged here. I moved mechanically through the house, the Victorian bones of it creaking softly beneath my steps like they, too, knew something was wrong. The scent of old wood and lemon polish still clung to the stair banister. My mother used to hum as she cleaned it, tracing the curved wood with reverent fingers. In the dining room, crumbs from the hurried breakfast they didn't invite me to still littered the table. The silence buzzed louder than any family brunch ever had. As I collected dishes and dumped them in the sink, my phone vibrated on the counter. A new email. The subject line read, "Moving forward, from Harold Brennan." My stomach tightened. I tapped it open. To Richard Harper, CC. Sloane Harper. From Harold Brennan, Esky. Subject, "Moving forward, Frank." As discussed, once you return from vacation, we can initiate proceedings to challenge Ava's occupancy. If the original trust documents aren't available, your claim as current head of household could carry more weight. Let's set a meeting to outline next steps. Harold below, in Sloane's reply. Perfect. She's not going to see it coming. Except, I had. Because Sloane had forwarded it to me by mistake. My breath caught. Fingers trembling, I reread the chain, hoping I'd misunderstood. But the words were crystal clear. They weren't just planning to ignore my place in this house. They were planning to erase me from it. I dropped the phone on the counter and bolted upstairs to the attic. The narrow steps creaked with every stride, dust motes rising like ghosts of the past. In the corner, behind a quilted chest and an old sewing machine, sat the fireproof lockbox my mother gave me when she was dying. She'd placed my hand on it and whispered, "Only open it if your father forgets who this house really belongs to." I'd never dared open it. Until now. The key, long worn smooth, slid into the lock with a quiet click. Inside, documents, wills, trust agreements, property titles, and, near the bottom, a sealed envelope in my mother's handwriting. To my daughter, if Richard breaks his promise. I didn't open the letter yet. My hands were too unsteady, my mind racing. Instead, I laid out the documents across the attic floor like puzzle pieces. Among them was the original trust agreement. I recognized my mother's meticulous handwriting on the addendum page. Clear as day, it named me as the sole beneficiary of the house. Richard had been granted residency only under the condition he upheld her wishes. He had no ownership, no right to sell, no right to evict me, and he damn well knew it. I sank back on my heels, heart pounding. This wasn't neglect. This was betrayal. Coordinated, deliberate betrayal from the man who had once held my hand through hospital corridors, who cried at her funeral. I stared at the sealed letter for a long time, the paper slightly yellowed but unbroken. When I finally peeled the flap open, the scent of lavender and old ink hit me first. Then the words, "My darling Ava, if you're reading this, then Richard has broken his word. I prayed he wouldn't. I hoped the man I once loved would respect our daughter's place in this home. But just in case, I've left you what you need to fight back. This house was bought with money from your grandmother, passed down through generations of Harper women. Richard knows this. He knows he was never entitled to it. If they try to take it from you, contact Eliza Montgomery. She was the estate's trustee, and she holds the legal authority to enforce the terms. You are not alone, Ava. Not in this. Love, always, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears tracing hot paths down my cheeks. She had known. She had known. They thought I was weak, alone. Just the quiet girl in the corner, still grieving, still clinging to memories. But they were wrong, because I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was angry, and now I was ready. I folded the letter with slow, deliberate care and placed it back into the lockbox, resting atop the legal documents like a final signature. Then I pulled out my phone, opened a fresh note, and typed 3 words. Contact Eliza Montgomery, because I wasn't going to let them steal my mother's house, or her legacy. I wasn't going to be left behind again. My mother had trusted him, enough to plan for when he'd break that trust. The subway rumbled beneath my feet as I stepped onto the sun-drenched sidewalk of Market Street, a copy of my mother's letter tucked carefully into my bag. The weight of it was heavier than paper, heavier even than grief. It was the burden of betrayal, and of the instructions she left behind to survive it. Eliza Montgomery's office was nestled on the 12th floor of a glass tower that rose above the historic district like it didn't belong. Sharp angles, sterile light, and clean lines. Everything about it felt cold, calculated. A stark contrast to the home I'd grown up in, where nothing matched but everything meant something. The receptionist, tight bun, tighter smile, led me to a corner office lined with certificates and photographs of old houses. I paused when I saw one of them. Our house. My mother stood in front of it, hammer in hand, mid-laugh. Eliza had been part of her world, more than I realized. Then the door opened and there she was. Eliza Montgomery in a gray suit and silver bob, eyes like flint under neatly arched brows. She studied me for a breath before breaking into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ava Harper, she said. I've been wondering when you might come see me. I handed her the envelope. Her fingers brushed over my mother's handwriting with something close to reverence. She didn't open it immediately. Instead, she motioned to the chair across from her and waited until I sat before she carefully unfolded the letter. She read it silently. No commentary. No sighs of sympathy. Just a tightening around her mouth and a nod when she finished. She really did prepare for everything, Eliza murmured, setting the letter down. I leaned forward, heart hammering. The trust. What exactly does it say? Eliza turned to her tablet, pulling up a scanned copy of the original documents. Your mother established the house in a living trust with you as sole beneficiary. Richard, your father, was permitted to reside in the house rent-free under specific conditions. Like remaining unmarried. Or if he did remarry, he had to either vacate within 12 months or compensate you at fair market value for your half. I blinked. He married Sloane 3 years ago. She nodded grimly. Then he's been in breach of the trust for 2 years and counting. I sank back into the chair. Everything in me wanted to scream, but instead, I took a breath and asked, "What happens now?" "I'd like to start with a formal warning," she said. "A letter explaining that we're aware of the breach and offering a final opportunity to comply voluntarily, either by vacating or negotiating compensation. And if he refuses? Then we escalate." Her voice was razor-sharp. "To court." I hesitated. Will it evict him? If necessary, yes. But we're not there yet. She paused, clicking through another file. However, my stomach twisted at the hesitation in her tone. There's another clause your mother added. It's more recent. It allows for immediate temporary removal if the resident creates a hostile or unsafe environment for the beneficiary. I stared. Hostile? You mean like emotional abuse? If it can be demonstrated, she confirmed. Isolation, verbal harassment, efforts to undermine your legal rights. Those would qualify. Every cold breakfast, every whispered accusation of freeloading, every time I'd been told I didn't belong in my own house. It all came rushing back like broken glass. Eliza, I said slowly. They've been planning to erase me from that house. I saw emails from their lawyer. Sloan accidentally sent me one. They're hoping the original trust documents are gone. A flash of something icy lit Eliza's eyes. Then it's good you came. They're moving fast, but we'll move faster. I watched as she drafted the letter to Richard. Firm, professional, and utterly uncompromising. It spelled out the breach, cited the remarriage clause, and warned that failure to respond in good faith within 5 business days would trigger enforcement proceedings. We'll send this to both Richard and their attorney, Harold Brennan, she said, printing 2 copies. Certified mail and email. I stood, folding the documents into a folder she provided. What if they fight back? They will, she said bluntly. But you have the law on your side, and now so do I. As I stepped out into the hallway, phone buzzing in my pocket, I allowed myself a flicker of hope. Then I checked the screen. A message from Sloan. We need to talk about your attitude. Frank is very disappointed. Expect changes when we return. The hope vanished like fog in sunlight. They were already retaliating, and they hadn't even seen the letter yet. Turns out the people plotting against me forgot one thing. I was listening. The storm clouds had been gathering all afternoon, thickening like a bruise across the Philadelphia sky. Inside the house, the air was still. The stained glass window above the stairwell filtered the gray light into soft hues of red and amber, casting shapes across the hallway floor. My mother's last restoration, now a silent witness to the war unfolding in her absence. I moved through the quiet, listening to the creak of the hardwood under my bare feet. There was something sacred about the silence, but it also made the digital ping from my phone all the more jarring. A banking alert. My eyes narrowed. Outgoing wire transfer. $4,200 to Brennan and Associates. Account, household joint, utilities maintenance. That account, our account, the one I contributed to every month to pay the water, heat, and property taxes. Richard had just used it to pay their attorney. His attorney. With my money. A cold fire ignited in my gut. I sat down at the dining table, pulling out my laptop, snapping photos of the banking alert, the emails Sloan had mistakenly forwarded, the trust documents. I created a new folder labeled Breach Evidence, June 2023, and uploaded everything. Then I opened a blank document and began typing. Incident log, Harper House, June 6th. Email from Sloan, removal plan, accidentally CC'd to me. June 7th. Bank alert, unauthorized use of joint funds. June 8th. Text from Sloan, implied retaliation. June 9. Verbal exclusion from family vacation. The cursor blinked at me, steady and unforgiving. It wasn't just about property anymore. They were painting me as unstable, unfit, like I didn't belong. I leaned back in the chair, hands clenched into fists. Every fiber of me wanted to scream, but I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I had to be smarter. Then my phone buzzed again, an incoming call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. but something in my gut made me answer. "Hello? Ava?" The voice was soft, uncertain, then more familiar. It's Lily." I sat up straighter. "Lily? Are you okay?" She hesitated. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Hotel ambiance, a poolside DJ, someone shouting "Piña colada" from afar. "I don't have long," she whispered. "I'm calling from the hotel phone. Mom doesn't know." My pulse quickened. "Why are you calling me?" I heard them talking last night. Mom and Frank. They were arguing." "About what?" "You. And the house. And—" She swallowed hard. "Mom said they should make it look like you're not mentally well. Like, unstable. That it'd be easier to take the house if they had proof you weren't safe to live there." The room tilted slightly. I clutched the edge of the table. "She said maybe they could plant something in your room, like meds, or fake messages. I didn't hear everything, but it was bad." I closed my eyes. "Thank you for telling me." Lily's voice faltered. "They always told me it was Dad's house, that you were just staying there. But is it true? Did Mom leave it to you?" "Yes," I said simply. "She did." There was a pause, a soft inhale. "I thought so." Her voice cracked on the next words. "I'm sorry, Ava, for how I've acted. I didn't know the truth. I believed what they said." I blinked hard against sudden tears. "None of this is your fault. Please be careful," she whispered. "They're coming back in 4 days. I think they'll try something as soon as they land." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long time before setting it down. The fire inside me wasn't cold anymore. It was blazing. This wasn't a disagreement. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was character assassination, premeditated and malicious. And if I didn't act now, I might not get another chance. I opened my laptop again and pulled up Eliza's number. My fingers trembled only slightly as I typed. Subject: immediate action required. "Hi Eliza, after recent developments, I've made my decision. I'm ready to proceed with full enforcement. Please initiate all relevant provisions of the trust, including temporary protection and restriction of access. Let's lock the doors before they even make it back to the driveway. Ava." I hit send, then picked up the phone. She answered on the first ring. "Ava?" "I'm ready," I said. "Activate everything. We'll make our move before they do." There was a beat of silence. Then Eliza's voice came, calm and resolute. "Understood. I'll file the emergency motion first thing in the morning." When they returned from Paradise, their keys didn't work, and neither did their lies. The late afternoon sun turned the quiet street into a watercolor of gold and shadow. From across the road, I sat behind the tinted window of a rented SUV, engine off, phone in hand. My mother's house, my house, stood tall and serene, the Queen Anne spires glowing in the warm light, as if she herself were watching what was about to unfold. I adjusted the angle on my phone, checking the live feed from the security cameras Eliza's team had installed. Front porch, driveway, foyer. Everything was ready. 2 police cruisers were parked discreetly by the curb. A court officer stood at the gate with a clipboard and a body cam strapped to his vest. Eliza, in her crisp cream blazer and signature low heels, conferred quietly with the sheriff. Her calm, composed presence made her look less like a trust administrator and more like a general before battle. Then the cab pulled up. Richard stepped out first, tan from the Bahamian sun, dragging a designer suitcase behind him. His shirt was still half unbuttoned from the plane ride, and he had that relaxed, post-vacation swagger. until his eyes landed on the sheriff's badge. Sloane emerged next, oversized sunglasses hiding half her face, her lips already pursed with suspicion. Lily trailed behind, head low, carrying her own bag. She paused at the bottom of the driveway and looked straight across the street. At me. Just for a second. Then she lowered her eyes and stepped aside. Richard froze as the sheriff approached. "Mr. Harper," the officer said, unfolding a document. "What's going on?" Richard's voice was tight. "You've been served with a temporary protective order, issued by Judge Arlo at the Philadelphia Probate Court. You are not permitted to enter the premises at 1847 Chestnut Avenue until further review." Sloane scoffed. "This is our home." "No," Eliza interrupted smoothly, stepping forward with a packet of papers. "It isn't. Not legally. Not anymore." Richard's head jerked toward her like he'd just noticed her for the first time. "Eliza Montgomery. Of course. Caroline's little friend." "Eliza Montgomery," she repeated. "Trust administrator of the Wells Harper Trust, which you've been in violation of for 3 years. She handed him the papers, the trust documents, the notarized timeline, the letter my mother had written, sealed and dated. I'd read it myself, barely breathing as the weight of her foresight settled on my shoulders. Richard scanned the pages with growing fury. "This is absurd. Caroline never—" "She did," Eliza said coolly. "The trust was established before her death. The clause was clear. In the event of your remarriage, you were to vacate the property or compensate the beneficiary, Ava, for half its market value. You did neither." Sloane tried to step closer. "This is harassment. We've lived there for years." "Years you weren't entitled to," Eliza replied. "You ignored the terms. You manipulated the living situation. And most importantly," she looked squarely at Richard, "you lied to your daughter." Richard turned beet red. "She's not. She was never supposed to—" "Supposed to what?" Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Find out? Stand up for herself?" The court officer gently raised a hand. "We need you both to step back from the gate. You may retrieve your belongings at a later date, under court supervision." Richard clenched his jaw, then spun toward the house, tried his key anyway, jammed it in, rattled the knob, yanked. Nothing. The locks had been changed, as per court order. That's when it hit him. His face drained of color. "She's watching," he muttered. "She set this up." He looked around, eyes darting, scanning the quiet neighborhood, until his gaze found my SUV across the street. For a moment, we just stared at each other. My father, the man who used to lift me onto his shoulders to change light bulbs, the man who now wanted me erased. His expression twisted. Not regret. Rage. He lunged toward the court officer. "This is a setup. She manipulated the system." The sheriff stepped between them. "Sir, I suggest you calm down." "I will not calm down," he shouted. "This is my house." "No," Eliza corrected, holding out the letter. "It was your wife's house, and she left it to Ava." Sloane hissed beside him. "We'll fight this. We'll take it all to court." "You already are in court," Eliza said. "And you're losing." They stood there, stunned and helpless, surrounded by authority they couldn't bribe or bully. I leaned back in my seat and tapped the icon on my phone. Replay footage. Every word, every accusation, every burst of entitlement. They were all recorded. Proof of their unwillingness to live peaceably. Proof of violation. A new message buzzed in. "Lily, they're saying they'll go public. Accuse you of elder fraud. Be careful. They're not backing down." I stared at the screen. For a long second, I didn't move. Then I typed back. Ava, thanks for the warning, and for choosing to tell the truth. I looked up, out across the street, and saw her again, standing apart from them, silent, still, watching like me. The tide had turned, and the ones who once held the power were now on the outside looking in. You can fake affection, you can fake memories, but you can't fake legal documents. The courthouse smelled like old paper and varnish. Its marble floors echoed every step like a gavel strike. I sat at the petitioner's table beside Eliza Montgomery, her file folders crisp and color-coded, her expression steeled. Opposite us, Richard and Sloane flanked their attorney, Harold Brennan, an aging man with slicked-back hair and a penchant for theatrical size. The courtroom was mostly empty, save for a few court clerks and a woman typing furiously at the stenography machine. But in the third row, sitting alone, was Lily. She looked small in the oversized blazer she'd borrowed from someone, maybe me, years ago. Her eyes met mine briefly. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Eliza stood. Your Honor, we're requesting the immediate and permanent revocation of Mr. Richard Harper's tenancy rights under the Wells Harper Trust, on grounds of sustained breach, financial misconduct, and a documented plan to manufacture false evidence against the beneficiary, Ms. Ava Harper. Judge Keating, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, nodded once. Proceed. Eliza passed the bailiff a thick binder. Exhibit A. Email correspondence between Mr. Harper and Ms. Sloane Harper, detailing plans to invalidate Ms. Harper's residency by alleging mental instability. These include conversations with a private attorney discussing fabricating scenarios that would portray Ava as a threat to herself or others. Harold Brennan leaned forward. Objection. These messages lack proper context and they were obtained legally from an account Ava was accidentally copied on. Eliza interrupted. Furthermore, Exhibit B contains bank statements showing that Mr. Harper redirected household funds, accounts primarily funded by Ava, into his legal retainer, in violation of financial agreements tied to the trust. I shifted in my seat, spine straight. This was it. The moment I showed the court who I really was. We also submit a signed statement from Lily Harper, Eliza continued, confirming she overheard conversations between the respondents concerning efforts to manipulate Ms. Harper's mental health narrative for legal leverage. Across the room, Sloane's head snapped toward Lily, her jaw clenched, her fingers curled into fists. Eliza paused. And finally, Exhibit C, the original, unaltered trust documentation, along with a sealed letter from Caroline Wells, the grantor of the trust. The bailiff placed a copy of the letter in front of the judge. I'd like to read a portion, I said, standing on shaky legs. I unfolded the letter. My mother's handwriting looped across the page like roots in old soil. She wrote, I began, voice soft at first. This house is not just a building. It is the culmination of our family's history, the work, the love, and the resilience of the women who came before us. Ava, if you are reading this, it means Richard has broken the promise he made to me. But remember, legal documents carry the truth, even when people forget it. My throat tightened, but I kept going. She asked me to protect this place, to protect her legacy, and I will. Judge Keating nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Mr. Brennan. Harold stood, visibly sweating. Your Honor, this is an emotional appeal. The fact remains, you have not provided a single counter-document, Eliza snapped, nor any substantiated claim that Ava Harper is unfit. No psychological evaluations, no third-party witnesses, Just insinuations and misappropriated funds. Richard stood abruptly. She's manipulating you. She's been obsessed with that house since Caroline died. I gave her everything and You gave me abandonment and a campaign to erase me, I said quietly. Don't confuse that with love. The judge raised a hand. That's enough. I've heard enough for today. A long silence stretched as he reviewed the documents before him. This court will issue a full ruling within 72 hours, he announced. In the meantime, I am suspending all tenancy rights of Richard and Sloane Harper at the Chestnut Avenue property. They are not permitted to enter the premises until further notice. An investigation into financial misconduct is hereby opened. Richard stared at the bench, as if trying to burn a hole in the wood. Outside the courthouse, the air was heavy with heat and tension. Reporters hadn't caught on yet, but the battle lines were drawn. I walked down the steps, Eliza at my side, flanked by quiet authority. Behind me, I heard hurried footsteps. I turned just as Sloane brushed past. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stopped in front of me, removed her sunglasses, and said with venomous calm, "You think you've won, don't you?" I said nothing. Her eyes narrowed. The game has only just begun. My mother left me a house, but she also left me a war. I just won both. The courtroom was quieter this time, like it already knew the story was over. Judge Keating's voice rang clear across the marble hall. After thorough review of all documentation, testimonies, and financial records, the court finds that Ava Harper is the sole legal owner of the Chestnut Avenue property. Richard Harper has violated multiple clauses in the Wells Trust, including financial misconduct and willful attempts to undermine the beneficiary's rights. He is hereby ordered to return all misappropriated funds. Sloane Harper is barred from accessing the property indefinitely. A hush followed the pronouncement, the kind of silence that doesn't demand applause, only acknowledgement. Eliza gave my hand a brief, firm squeeze. Behind me, Richard sat motionless, his eyes downcast. Sloane leaned back in her chair, arms crossed so tightly they looked like a cage. Lily, a few rows behind them, stared ahead. Not at me, not at them, just forward. Maybe that was enough. The papers were signed. The gavel struck once. It was over. I stood on the porch of the Victorian home that evening, keys cold in my hand. The sky burned orange above the old rooftops, as if the day itself were sealing the chapter. Inside, the scent of old wood and lavender cleaner met me like a memory trying to hug back. I didn't expect the knock. Lily stood at the bottom of the steps, backpack slung over one shoulder. "I brought you something," she said. I stepped aside, letting her in. She handed me a small, creased envelope. "It was in Mom's suitcase. She said you'd probably try to finish the attic project someday." She paused, biting her lip. "I wanted you to have it." I opened it slowly, yellowing blueprints drawn by my mother's hand. At the bottom, in faded pencil, "For Ava, the one who understands." The breath caught in my throat. We stood together in the upstairs hallway, looking toward the attic door. I hadn't been up there in years. My mother always said she'd turn it into a library, a place where dreams sat on shelves and sunlight spilled across forgotten words. "I know I don't have to say it," Lily said quietly, "but I'm glad you fought back." I nodded. "You helped, even if you didn't mean to at first." She gave a small half smile. "Weekend visits, maybe?" "Absolutely." Later that night, after Lily had gone and the lights had dimmed, I climbed the stairs alone. Each step creaked like it remembered me. I reached the attic door, its white paint chipped, the knob cool beneath my fingers. I turned it. Dust motes danced in the shaft of moonlight pouring through the round stained glass window. Boxes lined the walls, a rolled carpet, stacked books, and in the center, a wooden drafting table, just like the one my mother used to sit at for hours, drawing visions out of air. I stepped into the space, blueprint still in hand, heart loud in my chest. It's time to finish what she started. The house that once echoed with betrayal now stands as a symbol of justice reclaimed. Ava didn't just protect her inheritance. She reclaimed her dignity, silenced those who tried to erase her, and honored a legacy that was nearly lost to deceit. When injustice is met with unwavering courage, the final verdict can echo through a lifetime. In the end, some battles aren't just about property or power. They're about proving that truth, once unearthed, cannot be buried again. And no matter how long it takes, justice always finds its way home.